Here we go. We're kicking off predictions and fight week for UFC 319 in Chicago with a fight in the middleweight division contested by Nursultan Rouzabov and Bryan Battle. Bryan Battle is making his move to middleweight after missing weight by about 4 pounds in the welterweight division, showing that he can't make the weight anymore. Rouzabov is now also a middleweight, but he did fight against Joaquin Buckley at 170, and it was crazy because he was like 6'5" and still made 170 comfortably. I think Rouzabov is mid, and I'm going to get hate from people from Uzbekistan, so I may have to glaze him for more likes and views, but we cannot be fooled by the EV last name because he is a mid-grappler who got held down constantly by Joaquin Buckley, who is a striker, and he had a razor-close fight with Dustin Stoltzfus, who is not that great of a fighter. And he also rocked Nursultan badly in that fight too. Bryan Battle is a volume striker who doesn't really have power, but he is enough to overwhelm fighters sometimes, and Nursultan is a guy who is not high output and takes some time to reset, so I don't know if he will do enough to score on him. Either way, I still think Nursultan Rouzabov may land 1 or 2 takedowns, and he will get a very close 29-28 decision by taking the first 2 rounds and Bryan Battle turning it up as the fight goes on. Edson Barboza is returning to face Dricus Du Plessis, and he will be competing at lightweight for this fight. His return to fight a lightweight just brings back all the memories in my brain of him landing crazy knockouts, like his spinning wheel kick against James Vick or his flying knee KO of Beneil Dariush. He has always had pretty bad grappling, but I don't think that Dricus Du Plessis is going to be the one to grapple unless he is very hurt and has to panic shoot in. Barboza has lost a little of the sting in recent years, and his hands are not really dangerous at all at this point. The only way he is going to finish a fight is if he lands a spinning wheel kick. He is still a very technical kickboxer and is good at keeping his distance because he has to, otherwise, he will get absolutely mauled by anybody that gets a hold of him. This matchup is favorable for Barboza because Dricus Du Plessis is also an older guy, and Barboza is known for having really bad cardio, and his sting is all gone by halfway through the second round, so it becomes more like point fighting for him. I think I'm going to pick Edson Barboza to win this fight by decision for 2 reasons. Reason 1 is because he is one of my favorite fighters, and reason 2 is because he is a super crafty vet. Everyone's favorite gooner, Chase Hooper, is going to face Alexander Hernandez, and this stops his absolute terrorizing of the old people of the lightweight division. There were some real downsides to Chase Hooper's last fight, and it was that he wasn't really content with standing and banging against an old Jim Miller, who can crack but is as slow as can be at this point in his career. I feel like he didn't take many chances, but he showed amazing control and transitions while on the ground, but he was not able to submit him. I think that Alexander Hernandez is also an all-around mid-fighter and doesn't really excel anywhere specifically, and he will have to try to negate a major BJJ disadvantage. The reason why I think that Jim Miller didn't get submitted is that he has more experience than anybody in the UFC, has faced every type of matchup and fighter there is and has practiced in all those positions. If I remember correctly, Jim Miller was even able to submit Charles Oliveira years back when Charles was just a BJJ guy. I think that Chase Hooper is still evolving with each fight, and he is much better at 155 than 145 because he does not have to cut as much weight, and him being 6'1", so he needed to add some muscle to his frame as he moved up because he was just a kid when he was at featherweight. My prediction for this fight is that Chase Hooper will win by submission in the second round. We got an interesting grappler versus striker matchup in the middleweight division between Mikhail Oleksiejczuk versus Gerald Meerschaert. Gerald Meerschaert only really has one way to win, and that is by submission. The highlight reel we see Gerald end up on the most is when Khamzat Chimaev knocked him out with just 1 punch. The first Gerald fight I covered on this account is when he fought against Edmund Shabazian, and Gerald was getting outstruck badly, but Edmund decided to try and finish him on the ground after a knockdown. But Gerald showed his elite grappling and ended up submitting him. Oleksiejczuk made a similar mistake when he knocked down Kevin Holland last year, but got caught in an armbar not too long after that, and he didn't even tap and got his arm injured. But I don't think that Gerald is athletic or flexible enough to get many joint submissions, so I think that the way that Gerald wins this fight would have to be from a choke submission. The only problem is that he is cooked on the feet, and Oleksiejczuk has great hands with nasty power in them that can shut off almost anybody's lights out. My official prediction for this fight is that Mikhail Oleksiejczuk will win by first round TKO. King Green is going to get molested in this fight against Carlos Diego Ferreira this weekend. He honestly might end up in a body bag after he gets brutally knocked out again. I don't know whether to call him king, Bobby, or peasant because ain't no way I'm bowing down to this dude after the way he's been dealt by a bunch of others. Green lost his last fight when he got knocked out by a spinning wheel kick by Ruffy, and I don't think it was even that long ago. I'm pretty sure that fight took place in March at UFC 313. Diego is also coming off a loss, but it was due to damage. He was controlled by a skilled grappler in Grant Dawson, who excels in top position and rarely gives it up. I know Green knocked him out 2 years ago, but that was a fluke, which gave Green a spot in the rankings, and he would get murked time after getting a rankings spot, so it doesn't matter. Diego Ferreira also can inflict some serious damage. Rebecca knows this best because he looked like an alien by the time Diego finished him in the 3rd round of that fight. Once again, I got Carlos Diego Ferreira by nasty KO. Kai Asakura is going to have a bounce-back fight when he knocks out Tim Elliott at UFC 319. Kai Asakura is coming off a submission loss to the champion Pantoja, and that loss also happened to be his UFC debut in the promotion. Now he has a chance to bounce back with a win over former title challenger Tim Elliott. Tim Elliott is returning after being very inactive, so it has been almost 2 years since he last fought, and he is 38 years old in the flyweight division, which is basically a no-go for anybody to put a run together. I think Asakura will be in trouble if he gets caught on the ground, though, because in Rizin, they fight in the ring, so they don't have to worry about cage grappling. But Asakura got taken down one time by Pantoja, and automatically, he got submitted without even coming close to finding a way out. Asakura is an explosive type of fighter, though, so I think he might see himself getting tired in the later part of this fight, and he doesn't have the best defense either because he's been cracked many times before. But I think that Asakura will find an opening, and it could be a hook or knee, but he is going to win this fight by 2nd round TKO. This weekend, Michael Venom Page steps into the cage with Jared Cannonier, but I have a feeling this matchup might turn into a snooze fest. No disrespect to MVP, he is a master of keeping range and does a good job blitzing in, but he rarely engages and mostly stays on the outside like a point fighter in karate. Jared Cannonier has also been a lot more chinny in his last couple of fights, with almost all of his opponents dropping him pretty badly. He is around 40 or 41 years old, so he is quite slow now compared to 2 or 3 years ago. Jared Cannonier is also going to have a frame advantage, but not a range advantage. He will probably weigh like 20 pounds more than MVP on fight night, but he will be the shorter guy with less of a reach, so he might have to focus on using his physicality and making sure that he doesn't get clipped when entering distance. I still think the speed advantage will be a significant factor in this fight because MVP has speed-mogged opponents like Ian Gary and Kevin Holland, who are a weight division below and are known for their speed. So I think my final prediction for this fight is going to be Michael Venom Page to win this fight via boring decision. Carles Prates is going to shut the lights out on Jeff Neal this weekend at UFC 319 in Chicago, and I don't think it's even going to be close. Jeff Neal is one of the most inconsistent fighters in the UFC and can either be good with his hands and hit people hard or have a stinky clinch fight with Neil Magny, where he looks like he should be on The Ultimate Fighter. I know that Carlos Prates had a really bad performance against Ian Gary, where he looked like he was in the mud or frozen, but Ian Gary is also a very elusive fighter and can mix it up well when he wants to. On top of that, Neal has been pretty inactive, fighting just once since late 2024. His last outing was a first-round TKO win over Rafael dos Anjos at UFC 308, which ended when dos Anjos suffered a non-contact knee injury. I also think some forget the second part of the fight, where Carlos Prates, showing how much damage he was able to inflict with a small number of strikes. It goes to show just how hard he punches, and I think that he is the hardest-hitting guy in the division. Overall, I think that this is a very difficult stylistic matchup for Jeff Neal because he is not a great kicker either, so he does not have any tools he can utilize in order to neutralize Prates without getting into the firing line and getting into a war. So my official prediction for this fight is that Carlos Prates will win the fight by second round TKO. Man, I have a lot to say about this fight and Aaron Pico, and it is not going to be a very positive one for Aaron Pico. The dude was a generational prospect coming to MMA at like 18 years old with Olympic level wrestling and a Golden Gloves champion, but he has shown some fucking shitty fight IQ through the years, with him paying the price by getting subbed or knocked out early in fights. He has some of the best wrestling in MMA, and he has not used it one bit and has a 12-4 record when he is facing bums that are 11-8 or 15-11. I understand why the matchmakers are so high on him because it sounds like they have been on drugs recently, and yes, I'm directing that to Sean and Mick because why is Aaron Pico being put into a #1 contender fight then against Lerone Murphy on short notice? Of all, Lerone Murphy has proven himself to have an all-around game by showing control against Dan Ige to secure the decision, but he also showed excellent distance management against Barboza and Josh Emmett to win decisions there, too. He's undefeated and on an 8-fight win streak, so he is in a position to maybe claim a title shot. This is extremely similar to Leon Edwards. I'm not sure why they have him as an underdog for this fight because he has proven himself against like 3 or 4 ranked opponents now, while Pico hasn't proven himself against anybody and has also been out of the cage since February 2024. Which is basically a year and a half. My final prediction for this fight is for Lerone Murphy to win this fight by 3-round TKO and send Pico back to the regionals. I'm going to make this quick, the same way Khamzat Chimaev does. He is going to submit Dricus Du Plessis in the first round and a couple of minutes. Unfortunately, I see Dricus Du Plessis facing the same fate as everyone else, where they get submitted, and they have the look on their face like what the hell even happened. I think Khamzat is undeniable and is the second coming of Khabib, and we are all going to jump on the Chimaev train about how crazy dominant he is and how he is unstoppable. This fight only really has 2 outcomes. The first is what I already mentioned about Khamzat just running through him. The second outcome is if Dricus manages to survive the first round, he will push the pace on Chimaev, who we have seen gas after going so hard in the first round. Dricus would rack up damage and either finish the fight by TKO or win a dominant decision. This is also a fight that could end in a draw because Khamzat is known to get a 10-8 round, and if he gets another round and Dricus wins 3, then this fight could be a draw. Overall, I think Khamzat will continue his legacy at the top as he has fewer miles on him than Dricus, and we have seen Dricus accidentally find himself in very compromising positions on the ground. Final prediction is going to be Khamzat to win this fight by submission in the first round and enter the top 5 in the pound-for-pound rankings, and maybe be just behind Merab, Ilya, Islam, and Pantoja.